Hi, welcome to Business Brains and the Bottom Line. My name is Paul Delivery, your host today, and my guest today is Karin Aviles. She is the VP of Digital Go-to-Marketing and Learning for the JS Group. Welcome to the show, Karin.
Hey, Paul. Thank you so much for having me. It's awesome to be here.
Oh, you're quite welcome. So the subject matter that I want to talk to you about today is social selling. It's a big buzzword today, and the art of selling has changed. But really, I kind of want to go back to your beginnings and how you got to this point. So, you had said you're a recovering corporate American junkie. You're an actor, you're a speaker, you're an author, you're a life coach, but that all comes into play with the social selling thing. They're all kind of tied together. So, explain to me how you got here. You're a recovering corporate American junkie. So how did that?
Yeah. How long is this podcast again? How much time do we have?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot to it. So we'll.
There is. I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes version, but way back when I graduated college, I had always dreamed of dancing and acting. So I went to school for dance. I was a dance major, and I was like, I'm going to go on tour with Janet Jackson or something. I'll be a backup dancer. This will be amazing. And so I moved to Miami to pursue my dreams and was waiting tables. And, I got little gigs here and there. I was in a movie from Justin to Kelly. Some of you might have remembered that movie with Justin Guarini and Kelly Clarkson. I was the bathroom girl. So that was my big break. I had my own trailer. I got it was really cool. I felt like, oh, I've made it. This is amazing. And then I struggled for years to make ends meet. And eventually I got this harebrained scheme to go into corporate. I was like, I'm going to work at a job for 1 year, just 1 year. I'm going to save every single penny. And then I'm going to quit and I'm going to act full time so that I don't have to wait tables. And at this point, I was living in New York City. So I got a job at T-Mobile selling BlackBerries and got my first commission check. And it had 4 numbers on it.
Oh, wow.
4 numbers. I was like, on one check? I'd never seen so much money in my life. And I mean, some people are probably just laughing right now, like, oh my gosh, but I was so excited. And I thought, oh, well, this is it. I've made it. I went right down to a Coach store and I bought a purse and an iPod holder and a scarf. And it was like, the rest is history.
Yeah. So you blew all the money. So you had to go back to work.
I blew all the money. So you know what I would say? I got addicted to the money. I got addicted to that rush of getting that commission check, of getting promotions, of getting title bumps. I just chased for the next 15 years in corporate, all that external validation that you could possibly think of. Right. So, the second I would get a job, I was already thinking, how do I get the next title bump? How do I get the next pay bump? Never mind being happy with what I have now. I mean, I was already on to the next thing. And so this is what I mean by a recovering corporate America junkie is, I woke up one day and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't love my life. On paper, it looks great. I'm making 6 figures. I'm happily married. I have 2 kids. They're healthy. There's a Benz in the driveway. How dare I be unhappy?
Right.
It just wasn't making me tick. I was so unfulfilled. I was so just about every day. And so I finally, kind of took control of my life. I got back in the driver's seat and I made some key changes, which one involved going into consulting and leaving the traditional corporate world.
So when you say going into consulting, what type of consulting did you go into?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate to join JS Group. So our CEO, Janet Shines, and I worked together for years at a telecom company. And, we had a great relationship. And when she heard that I was kind of a free agent on the market, she scooped me right up and said, come on over. We need someone to run our digital practice, our go-to-market launches, helping our channel clients really be better social sellers and making our programs more of a true learning curriculum. So they had a lot of great presentations that we were doing for clients, but there was that learning element and retention of the material that was kind of missing. So I came in and I built a lot of workbooks and things that would really make this a more tangible structure for our clients. So I do most of the social selling boot camps and really helping clients capitalize on the changing trends and make sure that they're right there to kick their competition's butt.
Yeah. So let's start with the basics, Karin. What is social selling?
Okay. So
I know there's a lot, that's a broad net there, but because people talk about it a lot, the traditional selling of making cold calls and sending emails and not real effective, right?
Right. So the operative word here in this word social selling is social. And I think a lot of people forget that and they go right for the selling. And so this has evolved a lot over the past few years. When social selling started, it really meant blasting everyone in your network with a bunch of in-mails, right? And they were really long and, nobody really wanted to read that much, but that's just kind of all we knew for social selling. And now it's become so much more than that. So the way I would define it is really that it is selling and creating relationships on a digital platform versus those traditional methods of outreach like face-to-face and old school cold calling. And I was thinking about this podcast. I was sort of reflecting on my days cold calling in New York City. And do you want to know some of my tactics? I mean, this is how I used to get business.
Salesperson to salesperson. I'm always up for some good stories.
So believe it or not, I used to smoke. And so I would go up to people outside of a building and I would pretend like I didn't have a lighter. And I would say, oh, can I borrow your lighter? And I would strike up a conversation with them. And I would ask them, what company do you work for? Oh, what floor are they on? I would just start talking to them. And then as soon as they would walk away, I would sneak in behind them into the building and be like, oh, I'm going to XYZ company, floor, blah, 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 from the person I had just talked to. So they were like unknowingly giving me access to their building so that I could get in. And then I would just cold call, like a 20-story building and just get in there. But that's not effective. And it's horrible when you get caught and you get thrown out of the building, which has happened.
Yeah, we've all done it. I've been thrown out of a few buildings myself, by the way. Not my more prouder moments, but
no, I remember calling my dad crying. This was my first cue that a corporate was probably not for me, but I was crying outside of Rockefeller Plaza in New York City. And I'm like, I just got thrown out of a building. They like physically picked me up and chucked me out. Like I was being thrown out of a bar. I know. And I was like 105 pounds. I was like, really, guys? But they were so serious. They were really mad. They really were trying to show me that I did not belong there. And my dad was like, suck it up, buttercup, type of thing. Like, hey, this is
security's gotten a lot tighter at buildings too, I think, versus 10, 15, 20 years ago. You could walk in those days and, just go and ask for people. Now you can't even get in the front door half the time, but it is what it is. So
we have to evolve as sellers, right? We have to come up with a different approach for how we're going to get in and talk to these people. And social selling has just been the great equalizer, right? It gives everybody sort of a level playing field, if you will.
So what type, when you say social selling, and I don't expect you to give all the industry secrets out because I know people have to pay for those, right?
That's right.
What are some of the things that you're looking to do when someone engages with you on a social selling campaign? What are some of the things you try to accomplish with that person?
Yeah. So, I mean, certainly profile is like the first thing that we try to tackle in our programs at JS Group, because so many people, you would just be amazed, they don't fully fill out their profile. I see the pictures right from their wedding day. And I get it, ladies. I never looked more beautiful than on my wedding day either. Okay. And I want everyone to remember me as that person, but I don't show up like that, right? I have my glasses on today, right? My hair is straight. It's not in a French twist or something fancy. That's not how I look. So that is not the picture that I need on LinkedIn. I need something that actually looks like me.
Yeah.
A lot of times people have the arm around somebody, right? And the girlfriend's head is cut out. And I'm like, I can literally tell you cut your girlfriend's head out. Like this picture is not working. So, just getting people to really have that crisp profile that says, hey, I'm more than a salesperson, right? I'm a thought leader in this space. And I'm someone who can really guide you and give you advice.
Yeah. So full disclosure, Karin, you've helped me with my social selling. So
and you're killing it. You're crushing it.
My social selling index is up to an 82. And, but I met you after I started this podcast, but part of the reason I started the podcast was to create a different brand, right? Something, because when the pandemic hit, we're all sitting at home and I figured I've got to separate myself somehow, some way. Hey, I'm not Joe Rogan. I don't claim to be, but having fun with it, getting my name out there. And then with your help from social selling, you've been a big help to me. I've learned a lot about, how to get your name out there and just how to engage insightfully with people versus, you're talking about pouncing on people. You said something earlier that I kind of chuckled when you said it about how many times have you been on LinkedIn and you connect with someone and about a millisecond later, you get like a 12 paragraph, response saying, hey, we do this, that. I'd love to set up a half-hour call. And it's just a turnoff.
Oh, totally. Yeah, people just check out, right? And so one of the analogies that I use in our boot camp is that it's like dating, right? And so I've been with my husband for like 19 years. So I don't really know what it's like to date anymore. So I guess I should full disclosure there, but it's kind of like when you bring a date home to your parents and it's too soon, like on the first date, you don't take them to meet mom and dad, right? Like you wait a couple of dates, maybe years, depending on the person.
Yeah.
And
months.
So months at least. But when you connect with somebody on social and you instantly turn around and tell them why they need to buy all your products and services, it's like you've just done that. You've gone too far, too fast, too soon, and it's an instant turnoff.
Yeah. No, I got to admit, when someone does it to me, I click. I don't even respond. I say no thanks, just because, again, trying to build those relationships is the most important thing, and just kind of what the term you use is engage with insight or something along those lines.
Yep. That's one of the things actually that LinkedIn is measuring us on in our SSI score is, are you engaging with insight? So are you putting out posts that people are finding interesting and relevant? Are you commenting on other people's posts? Are you being engaged in the LinkedIn groups? A lot of people don't realize that the algorithms really reward people who are active in groups. So there's all these little tips and tricks that we try to make sure sales professionals really understand when they're out there social selling. Because I think that's one of the biggest gaps is the why behind it that is still missing.
Right.
I have a lot of clients come through and I'm like, all right, so have you been doing social selling since our last call? And they're like, no, I've been getting busy, or, I don't know, I didn't really want my boss or anybody to see me on LinkedIn. And I'm like, why? Like you
That's
are
your
prospecting.
job.
Exactly. Yeah. So there still is a little bit of connotation around LinkedIn as like a social media platform that you're not working, or you're, messing around on social and not really adding value to the business. But if our senior leaders and the executives at our companies understand the value of this and they understand what we're teaching in these programs, then you can start to really bridge that gap and bring everybody much closer.
Sure. It's funny. I'm in technology sales, and I know a lot of sales reps, and it's amazing how when managers have nothing else to go back on, they revert to call blitzes. We got to do more call blitzes. And I just kind of scratch my head that they don't work, but let's go back to something that doesn't work because I've got nothing else.
Sure. Yeah, and it's uncomfortable, right? And people feel the pressure, and you're getting, drilled from the top down, like, hey, we got to hit our numbers. We got to hit our numbers. So I get it. But we've actually turned those call blitz days into LinkedIn social selling blitz days, right? So instead of taking an hour and cold calling people and getting hung up on and maybe getting 2 or 3 people to come through, we're out sending connection requests to people who meet our ideal customer profiles and the criteria that we're going after. So it's like the concept works, but it's like we have to change the vehicle for which we're using that concept.
Yeah, I think there's more companies coming around to that. I hear more and more companies that are training their people on social selling. But again, if the manager of that group doesn't buy into it, he thinks it's BS, he's going to revert back to what he thinks works.
Right.
And they're going to, it's funny. I just had lunch with a rep from a manufacturer last week, and the boss is, pounding them overhead about call blitzes. So I told her, look, I said, I'll come make some calls with you. We'll make it a fun day. We'll, just to have someone to do it with. And maybe we'll open a couple of doors. I'm not holding my breath, but I figured, help out a little bit if I can.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
I mean, look, I'm not saying that none of the traditional methods will ever work. I have some clients who are in very traditional Southern cities, and they actually do okay from calling, right? Because they have a way in, it just works. It's kind of like that good old boy, like local feel, but most people are not going to be that lucky.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the industry you're in too. If you're calling on people that don't get a lot of calls, but I know people in our industry, I ask people, how many calls a day do you get? They go, I have no idea. I don't answer my phone.
Yeah.
But lots. I mean, so that tells you, a lot about the success of that. But so what do you think? So I've bought into it. I'm a believer,
Yes.
right? I'm out posting every day, and it's been fun. And it's not disingenuous to me, because I'm really trying to make good connections, because I'm a relationship seller. I am not, commodity. Once you buy some stuff I sell, we build long-term relations, more on the consulting side of things. So what do you think people's biggest fears or issues are of getting into social selling? What's holding them back?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is confidence and just feeling like I don't know what to do, so I'm going to do nothing.
Right.
It's interesting because a lot of people who come through our program are older, right? They're in their 50s, their late 40s, and they've never used social media before. And so they always come to me and say, well, Karin, I'm old. I can't learn this, right? I don't know. This is hard. And I tell them, actually, you are much better poised than the younger millennial generation and Gen Zs to be successful at this, because you actually understand as a sales professional what to do with someone when you get them offline. You're never going to probably go through the full sales cycle only digitally, right? You're going to start there, but then you're going to have to transition to having maybe a face-to-face meeting or a sales call or something where they're going to see you. And our older sales professionals, they know how to work those relationships. They know how to read body language and when to go for the kill and close, and when to back off and go, what? They're not there yet. And so sometimes the younger generation, I don't want a blanket statement, not all of them, but a lot of them, right? They do have a harder time taking someone from a digital relationship and then being able to converse offline. I spent years in pharmaceutical sales too. I had a little stint there. And so I was taking doctors out who were, twice my age to dinner, and I had to figure out a way to have a conversation with them. I had to figure out a way to keep the evening lively and make sure everybody had a good time. That is a skill that is a skill.
That's hard because there's a generation gap, when so for me, if I go out with someone for lunch or dinner that has married, kids in college, a lot in common, right? A lot of common ground. The real ski is to connect with people that you don't have a lot of common ground with. Right. You got to find common ground, right?
Yes. And it takes some work, but I think the people who are traditionally sort of like, oh, I don't know about social media, are actually the ones who, if they master these skills, will be wildly successful, because they're going to have both the online and the offline skills.
Yeah. So I got to admit, I think there's a lot of truth to that. Sometimes taking the first step is the hardest step. I know, just doing this podcast, I remember the first few episodes I did, when I started posting them, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? When you're putting yourself out there for public consumption, it can be nerve wracking. So but I hate to say it, but you just got to kind of get over it and realize, now that I'm doing them and doing social selling and doing the podcasting, I'm not too worried what people think. I mean, I don't get too many negative comments. I've had a couple of for my podcast, but most of them is very positive and uplifting, and it's been a great experience. So I'm enjoying it.
Well, you haven't really made it until you've had a troll. So I would be concerned if no one had, left negative comments, because that's just part of the territory.
Yeah.
But
And I don't respond to the negatives actually.
No.
Just it's not even worth it. I won't even get into the details, but it's just not even worth it to respond because then it just spirals out of control. And next thing you know,
Yeah.
you're on the news, and I don't want to be on the news unless it's positive, of course.
Right. No, that's fair enough. But I think
So
it goes back to the why, right? Like, why am I on social media? And so a lot of people are like, well, because my boss said to, and that's a terrible reason, right? I mean, yes, he's right. You should listen to him, but like, let's get to the why. And so what we have found statistically is that 67% of B2B tech buyers prefer to have a digital engagement versus an in-person meeting or phone call. So 67% of the people who are buying tech solutions, this is how they want to engage now, is digitally. So we got to be there. And that number is only going to go up as more millennials move into decision-making positions.
yeah, that number was amazing to me. I'll be honest with you, Kim. When I
Yeah.
heard that number, that's when I got convinced, okay, I've got to do something. And I would say I fall into the older category, Karen, like you had mentioned earlier, not to throw my age out there, but I just said, hey, I had to change things, especially with the pandemic. We had to make changes, and I just said, the heck with it. I took the bull by the horns and started doing the social selling with the podcast, and it's been working. It's been a fun experience.
I'm glad you've liked it.
So I got a question for you, but how did you transition into the social selling? Being, you're a corporate salesperson, moving up the ladder. Why social selling? How did you get into that?
Yeah, so actually, I fell into social media. I had a marketing role at the
Got
energy
it.
company that I was at. And so I was leading our social media team, and it was something that I did, personally in my own life. I always had Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and all that stuff. So
Okay.
for me, it was really easy to make that transition into actually teaching people how to use the tools and the platforms.
Yeah. So you were already kind of into that. So it was an easy transition for you then.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. And I think it is one of those things that, you have to enjoy it if you're going to
Yeah.
teach it, because it just comes across differently when you have that excitement and that passion for something. Like if I were to teach something about financial systems, or I would be terrible at it because I would be
Yeah.
like, I don't really know or care.
Yeah. One thing you kind of taught me was, I put a calendar invite to myself every day for social selling so I can remind, because I'm not going to lie to you, Karen. I know you can probably slap my hand. I don't do it every day because sometimes, I have a day job, right?
Right.
So
Well, and you bring up a good point. It doesn't need, I know I'm probably gonna get in trouble for saying this either, but you don't need to be on there every day, all day. Like, we understand that as sales professionals, you have this is part of your job now, right? But you do have other things to do than just
right.
prospecting on social media and posting on social media, right? That needs to be one of the tools in your toolbox that you leverage. And so I'm glad that you put that time on your calendar. And that's one of the best practices that we do with a lot of our clients, is to make sure that they're putting time, dedicating it. If not daily, what is the cadence you can stick to? Is it every
Right.
other day? Is it Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Pick that, because if you just pop in and out, it doesn't stick. You don't get the same results.
Right. Yeah. It's the same with podcasting. They when I
Mhm.
first got into this, they said, look, if you're going to post, if you're going to come out with episodes, you've got to be consistent more than anything else. So I do one every 2 weeks, because I just, like, to your point, committing to something every week would have been tough for me, because there's a lot more than this episode being posted that goes on in the background, time, interviewing people, prospecting for guests. And so I knew I could get 2 guests a month pretty easily and
Yeah.
handle that. And so for the time being, we'll stick with that. But you're right. It's about commitment and, making that at time. There's some days I'm just not feeling it either, by the way, like
Oh, yeah.
I see it come up on my calendar and I'm like, I should be doing today, but I'm just not feeling it. I'll post a couple of quick things and that's it,
Sure.
or respond to someone. But that's it. But I think people may be scared of the commitment. Would you say that's an accurate statement?
Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of people actually underestimate the commitment. So we see a lot of people come through our programs who are executives or, at a higher position in the company. And I always try to steer them to have a salesperson take these calls, put a salesperson in the program, because their day-to-day job is to prospect and be out there and evangelize for the business. Whereas, our executives, they're wearing a million different hats, right? Like they have a lot of different things that they have to think about, HR issues they have to deal with, policy changes that they have to make, new products launching, right? So they're torn in so many different directions. They have a very hard time committing. So yeah, I definitely see that as being a barrier for some.
Well, I think the good news is what's nice is now that the pandemic's coming to an end, hopefully. I know me personally, we're getting out and doing face-to-face meetings again.
Yes.
And thank the Lord, we live in Texas, so it's pretty wide open here right now, which is not, you're in
South Carolina,
South
so we're
Carolina.
the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's nice to see people again. I got to admit, if you're a relationship seller like we are, your strength isn't sitting at a computer all day.
No, that's true. But I will tell you, nothing is ever going to go back to the way that it was. You're going to see a lot of companies who say, you know what, actually, we didn't need that overhead. We're going to get rid of that office, and people are going to work from home. And you're not going to have people. I mean, I know I'm certainly not like, hey, come on over and have a coffee on my couch with me, right? So there is going to be still some of that limitation into how much face-to-face are we going to really get? And so having these digital skills, it's not going away. It's not changing.
Yeah. No, I've heard some people recently say that, say you lived in a rural area, now you're not going to be forced to move. Say, hey, I got a job in, San Francisco. Well, maybe you can work remotely. I think, and that's the one thing I think that has changed is I think business is going to be more open to that. Say, hey, we found this guy or gal with talent, but he lives 3 states away. Can we use him as long as he works remotely? I think you'll see more of that. I think, and I think everyone's getting more comfortable with Zoom calls and Teams and doing it. I know I never turned my camera on before. Never. Hated it. But now I'm, it's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah. And I hope that it does change, because I know, at least for me being a working mom, I mean, that hour and 15-minute commute that I did every day was such a suck on my energy, on my time. I mean, it made life so much harder for me that it was unnecessary. I mean, I worked for a telecommunications company, for God's sake. Like we were out preaching to other people about how you could have a mobile workforce, and yet we were all required to be in the office. And I just could never jive with that. I'm like, this makes literally zero sense. And I'm not saying it has to be 5 days a week, but even if I was able to work from home 2 or 3 days a week, I mean, that for me as a mother of young children would have completely changed my life. And who knows, maybe I would have hung on in corporate for longer. I don't know. That could have totally changed things for me.
Yeah, no. So what, if someone wants to get into social selling, I mean, what kind of advice would you give them? And then I want to pivot to some of the other things you're doing in your life too. So
sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, first of all, you should definitely contact JS Group and sign up for our social selling boot camps, because
good call.
We will give you all the tools and techniques so you don't have to try to figure this out on your own. But look, there is a ton of free resources on the internet. I mean, you could probably Google how to have an effective social media profile, and you're going to find some valuable tools and resources out there. And then what I always like to do is like work smart, not hard. Find someone who is crushing it. Go look at Paul's profile on LinkedIn and do what Paul's doing, right? Like find somebody who's already there and just emulate them with your own flavor. I mean, don't copy it,
Sure.
But
Actually, that's a good point, Kat. That was one thing I liked about this was it was structured. You're like, okay, you got to build your profile. You got to do this. You got to do that. You gave me all the steps and the tools that, now I can do this on my own. I don't need, not that I don't need someone to help once in a while, but for the most part, I understand what I need to do. And it was very pragmatic. And I like that.
Yeah. And I think the one-on-one coaching has been one of the biggest value adds that we've been able to offer people, because the boot camps are great for a level set, right? You get a ton of information in those sessions.
Right.
And but for some people, the people on that call are all at different levels. So when we have the one-on-one coaching calls, we can really meet people where they're at and go, oh, you really didn't understand this concept, or you need more help with this, or you actually have questions on this area. Like, let's just focus there and we don't need to worry about the rest right now because you already understand that, or we'll get there later.
Well, cool. So I'm looking at your bio, by the way, and you have like a million things you're doing right now. I'm not exaggerating. So, I mean, you're a speaker, you're a life and reinvention coach. You're helping, women transform their lives. You have Edit Your Life program, Successful Working Women, Rocking Reinvention. Tell me a little bit about all that stuff and what the genesis was. I don't know how you time in the day to do all you do. And I went to your website. You're coming out with a new something in September.
Yes.
I'll let you talk about that if you'd like.
Sure. So it was quite a journey. And so, as I said, was kind of found myself in the middle of this midlife crisis. That's how I identified with it. And someone at work asked me a really pointed question. I was having a toxic day and I was kind of like venomous that day. And he just looked at me and he said, Karin, what do you want to do before you die? And I was like, I don't know. So it sort of set off this journey for me of personal reflection to figure out, like, what do I want to do before my time is up here? And I remembered a book that I had started writing in 2009. This book had literally gotten buried so deep back in my brain, I forgot that it was sitting on my computer for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I literally, in this moment, I was watching the video, The Secret, and Jack Canfield, from the author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul, was on talking about his book. And it was like this light bulb went off for me. And I was like, my book, I have to finish my book. So it is a memoir, and it looks at the mishaps and misadventures of me and a special partner in crime for the last 40 years. I don't know if this was like a PG podcast. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the title, but it's called The Ins and Outs of My Vagina, a penetrating memoir.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, not me, by the way. I read that title and I'm like, that's interesting, but I'm certainly not going to bring that up unless she mentions it.
Which is fair enough. I mean, we could always edit that out, but I think it's twofold, right? There's a piece of me that like hates that I can't just say that title out loud because, it's a body part like any other body part. And so why are women so shamed for having one? I mean, it's like we're 50% of the population now. Like it's sort of baffling. And it's like, what is the message that we're actually sending to women, which is part of why I am writing the book. And then also it's just so comedic. Like it is just the realest, most honest look at being a woman and the things that we go through that you'll ever read. Like my editor was like, no one is talking about this stuff in this way. So, we'll see. Yeah.
When's it going to be done?
So it is done. We're in the final design stages now. So the whole thing's written. We have the layout, the cover designer, just a phenomenal cover design. And so it's going to be coming out in September. So now we're just in the process of building the platform and getting the launch ready.
Nice. Well, congratulations. And so
you
add actress, author, VP of a big company. You're a life coach.
Yeah.
What a pretty boring life, Karin.
Right. Well, and it's so funny because I didn't know that I wanted to be a life coach. When I was writing this book, it just ignited this whole other piece of me. And my editor was like, you need to have a website and we need to like find ways to direct traffic to you. And I was like, okay. I'm like, what do I put on my website? Like, what do I say? And I was like, I know, I mean, I'm doing some speaking here and there. I was like, okay, I'll talk about my speaking. And then as I was doing the speaking, I was like, you know what? This isn't enough. I was like, I need a way. I mean, it's great that I can go out and inspire women and get them jazzed up about changing their life and taking their power back. But I was like, no, I want to help them. I want to be there right alongside them, helping them every step of the way. And it's funny because I thought I was going to coach all women who wanted to like leave corporate. And I have a Facebook group called Successful Working Women Rocking Reinvention. And so it's really for other women who are either already rocking their reinvention, they're getting ready to, but they're a little nervous still, or they're in the process of it. And we just have this really great supportive community. And as I was like putting all of this together, I was like, I just need a program or something where I can really walk these women through it. Oh, I know. Sorry. Stop. Squirrel. Sorry, sometimes I get telling stories, I forget where I was going. Okay, I'll pick up from here. So one of the things that I thought I was going to do was like coach other women to leave corporate. And it's funny because 80% of the women that I coach actually want to stay in corporate. And
Really?
once they learn, yes, it's fascinating because once they learn the tools and the techniques that I'm teaching them and how they can create better balance in their life and put their priorities first and like own their calendars again, they're quite happy in their job and it's okay for them to stay there. So, I never try to prescribe for my clients like what they should be doing. That's one of the things I love about life coaching is it's really coming to that decision together and asking the right questions to get them to reflect.
Yeah, what's right for you may not be right for them, right? It worked for you. So yeah, that's a good, it's good to have an open mind like that.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with all your endeavors, man. You're a busy lady, but I'm glad you came on the show today because again, the real purpose was social selling. I think that's a big one. I think you shed some light on a lot of things for some people, but I definitely wanted to work on some of your other things you were doing because you've got a great thing going, and best of luck.
Thank you. And it's just proof that, you don't have to do one thing. Like we can do so much and we can create this life that we love that is on our terms. Like for the first time since I was acting right out of college, I am living life on my terms again and setting my business up around what my ideal life looks like. And it's amazing.
That's a great thing to do and a great example, especially for your kids now too, right? They see, they see what you're doing every day. So I'm sure you're a great mother.
Well, I'm the better mother now than I was when I was in corporate. I can tell you that. That's for certain.
Well, any final thoughts, any final words for the viewers and listeners out there on social selling or life coaching or any pros that you want to share with us before we go our separate ways here?
Yeah, sure. And I think this goes across all of them. Like just take a risk, just go for it because it's like anything, it's a muscle, right? The more you do social selling, the more you practice taking control of your life, the stronger that muscle is going to get, the better it's going to be, and the more natural it's going to come to you. So if you're scared, obviously reach out to someone who can support you, right? If it's social selling, JS group, obviously they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect people with our team and get you set up. If it's personal life coaching, obviously same thing, you can reach out to me there and have a guide because it's always easier when you have someone showing you the way who's kind of been there, done that, than trying to figure it out on your own. Yeah, it's just faster.
I completely agree with that. Well, hey, Karin, thanks again for joining. And that's a wrap for Business Brains and the Bottom Line. Until next time.